Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Fronteras and Changing America. I'm Edmundo Resendez. On today's Fronteras, we take a look at how the Ronald Reagan Amnesty Program in 1986 created an American educator. Assistant Principal Gabriel Tellez shares his experience as a Nicaraguan immigrant and the life he has been able to build for his family in the United States thanks to the Reagan Amnesty.
My life was great. I'm from Nicaragua. I was sent over here when I was 16 years old due to political unrest back in my home country. I had a great family, parents, grandparents, mom, dad, brother, just like anybody else over there. My education was great. I had the great opportunity of landing. When I was sent here, I was sent to a family that I never met before, but my acculturation was different. The family I came to was, you could say it, a model American family. My biggest success, I think, is my 3 kids and my wife and myself. I always believed that education was the key to become a better person, to become what I wanted to be here in this country. We tried to keep the culture at home, the same things that we did back home. We tried to simulate them here at home. There have been some instances that somebody has said something that has bothered me, but I tell you what, I take it as a learning experience. So if they say something about me, maybe I needed to correct it, and then I became better at whatever it is that they say I was doing wrong. It was kind of hard at the beginning. It's hard to be around people that you cannot communicate with. So I waited till Ronald Reagan, the President Ronald Reagan, gave the amnesty program, and I was able to go through the amnesty program. I had enough. You had to have enough proof that you've been here in this country legally, that you have been doing the right things at that time, that you were working and paying your taxes. So all that information I was able to prove. And then that's how I became a resident, because of the amnesty program. After the amnesty program, you gotta wait another 5 years, and I waited another 5 years. So from 1979, I didn't get my citizenship until 1984. So yeah, it's a long process. It's a very long process. And it's a process that not many people know. From what I've seen in my lifetime, the acculturation part is different. Everybody lands in a different place. Everybody lands in different situations. I was able to come to a family that helped me out. And, nobody in there spoke in Spanish, so my English was picked up really fast. It depends on where you land, who are you with, what kind of background you come with, what type of education you come with from your country, and what type of support you have in here once you come over here. Every immigrant comes with different mentalities, and each one of them has a different need on how to acculturate themselves to this country. And the timing that it takes for them to acculturate is different from individual to individual. There would have never been anything quite what I have in here if I would have stayed at home. This country has given me everything I have, the family I have, I met here, the kids that I have were born in this country, so I give everything to this country, yes. It has given me everything I wanted and more.
Christian G A Zeller is a managing partner at Maney, Zeller, PA, and limits his practice to immigration and nationality law. He is our guest today to discuss the complicated issue of immigration. Mr. Zeller, welcome to Fronteras to Changing America.
Thank you, Edmundo.
Let's first talk about what brings you to our region, to Las Cruces.
Well, I maintain an office in El Paso, and I also maintain an office in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And our firm represents the University of New Mexico. So whenever I have an opportunity to travel through Las Cruces, of course, I like to stop on campus.
Let's talk about immigration. Why is it such a complicated issue in our country, and why is there such an impasse in Congress today regarding immigration?
I think we'll have to look back to the 1986 Reagan Amnesty in order to understand.
And it's called the Reagan Amnesty, even though it was brought up by Senator Simpson and Rodino.
That is correct, but Ronald Reagan, of course, was the president at the time, and at the end of the day, he had to sign it into law, and he did, as we well know. And at that time, there were approximately 3 million undocumented persons in the United States, and the Congress, after long debates, decided, well, let's have an amnesty and let's legalize everyone under the condition that all these folks would get employment authorization and eventually permanent residence in the United States, and also citizenship if they desired some years down the road, in exchange for strengthening the borders and enforcing our immigration laws. So that's exactly what happened, but only the first part of it. So
how can you tell us about the second part of it, enforcement?
The enforcement on the books at the time was actually for employers. What the country wanted is that employers check the eligibility whether persons in the United States were actually eligible to work. And there was limited enforcement, but not enough. And that's what caused more and more folks to cross the border. The economy was good in the United States. These employers created magnets, if you so will, and people kept on coming and the enforcement wasn't there. And that's how we somehow find ourselves again today with 11 to 14 million, or maybe more or less, undocumented workers in the country. And that is why there is such an impasse, because that first amnesty didn't really work in the eyes of lawmakers.
The numbers range, as you mentioned, from 10 to 14 million. You know, there's a possibility it could be more. There's a possibility it could be less.
Correct.
But how have those numbers fluctuated over the years since 1986?
I think they are a pure function of our economy. During the tech boom, during the times when our economy was growing, so were our undocumented workers. That is just the way it goes. When our economy tanked in 2006, 2007, less and less people came across the border. And when
Wasn't there a point where it was net zero as far as people leaving and people coming in?
That is correct, and that was within that time frame between 2007 and 2012. And when the economy started to recover, then of course, people would come back.
Let's talk about the recent history of immigration. We looked at 1986, the law that was signed in by Ronald Reagan. What other laws have come up since 1986? And apparently not too many.
Not too many, but it was still significant. There were several attempts to have another amnesty or to have another comprehensive immigration reform. One was in 2007. It was a bipartisan effort, actually, by Senator McCain and the late Senator Kennedy, and endorsed by then President Bush, but unfortunately our Congress was unable to pass that legislation. We had another attempt in 2012, and you may remember the Gang of Eight.
The Gang of Eight.
In our Senate, there were 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats, and what everybody thought was a great comprehensive immigration reform, unfortunately then deadlocked and died in the House of Representatives.
It wasn't even brought up for debate.
It was not in the House, no, it was not.
Why not?
It makes no sense, does it? I can only speculate on that, Edmundo, but I think it is because of the originally failed amnesty in 1986, where everyone said, well, let's bring these folks into the fold, let's give everyone work authorization and residence, and let's enforce the law on the other hand. And that part did not happen. And if you listen to the news, isn't that what we always hear? We must secure the border first before we can talk about immigration.
How do we go about securing the border? We've seen over the years that immigration forces have increased over the years. There's been more money invested in immigration enforcement over the years. What more needs to be done?
I agree with you, and I don't want to make light of that issue, but how about just declaring the border secure? We have walls, we have electronic surveillance, we have more Border Patrol agents every year, we have checkpoints around your state here in New Mexico.
I
Plenty.
can't leave my area without coming across an immigration checkpoint.
That is correct. We do know that interior enforcement is being stepped up for this very purpose. So deportations are up, and also employment eligibility verification is up. So maybe that is also part of securing our border. But I feel it is secure.
Before we go further, let's talk about the Immigration Reform and Control Act. What is that?
Well, the Immigration Reform and Control Act was, the trigger in 1986 and was then enacted in 1990 to have a more controlled immigration. But you can, of course, only do that if you follow through on all parts of that act, and that is really what didn't happen. Like I said before, Edmundo, it is the enforcement that didn't really take place, and the amnesty was just granted.
Let's talk about the word amnesty. Why is it such a hot potato? Why is it that nobody wants to claim it as something that could be positive for our country, and it's viewed in such a negative light?
Yeah, that's really a myth, isn't it? Whatever one does, it will be an amnesty. You can name it whatever you wish. Call it a relief of something. Call it whatever you want. It is an amnesty. So we'll just have to wrap our heads around that, and we're going to have to become content with that this is what we're going to have to do. Because are you going to deport between 11 and 16 million people? That makes no sense. That's not what this country is about, and I don't think that this is what the American people want. But it is an amnesty, no matter what we'll do about it.
The 1986 amnesty, let's talk about that, because you said a word earlier that caught my attention. Some view it as a failure, while others that benefited from it see it as a success. It brought into the fold close to 3 million people that lived in the shadows, that were able to work legally, that were able to contribute to our economy. And we saw an economic boom after that. Is there a possibility there could be an economic boom if we were to give amnesty to these 13 to 16 million undocumented immigrants? What are some of the benefits to legalizing them?
Well, there's no question about that. If I were to say that the 1986 amnesty was a failure, I should say that the subsequent actions may have been a failure. The amnesty itself was not a failure, as you correctly noted. Those folks contribute to the economy, as we just seen at the beginning of this.
A lot of them
report.
have become members of our economy. My brother-in-law, for example, benefited from the 1986 law, and he now owns a successful paint business. He paints houses, he hires people, and he pays taxes. I mean, a lot of these people have become productive members of our society.
Of course, and I would think that all or most of the 11 to 16 millions would do the same. Just imagine what it would mean in terms of taxes, what they would contribute to the economy, the businesses they would open up, the things they could do all day long, coming out of the shadows, actually running their businesses in the open and paying taxes and contributing.
What are some current immigration trends that you see? You practice law, immigration law in Florida and New Mexico. What are the differences in the immigration cases you see in Florida versus the cases that you see in New Mexico and also in El Paso?
The difference I see is only geographic, where our folks come from. In Florida, we have more Cuban nationals, of course, and folks from the Caribbean or from Europe. Here in New Mexico and in Texas, we see more Mexican nationals and folks from Central America. But the trends that we see are rather harsh. You may or may not know that past attorney generals have granted temporary protective status to nationals of folks where natural disasters happen. For example, Honduras. We had Hurricane Mitch in 1999, and those folks have enjoyed temporary protective status in the United States since then. That means they have an employment authorization and they don't have to go back to a destroyed country. The same applies to nationals of Haiti. Since the earthquake, I think it was in 2010, Haitians in the United States have been granted temporary protective status. Nationals from Sudan, nationals from El Salvador. Well, recently, the temporary protective status for Sudan was not renewed. Haiti and Honduras are coming up. in the next few weeks, so we don't know whether they will get a renewal on that. El Salvador then is going to be next. We don't know whether there will be a renewal. If you are from Russia today, you cannot get a visa to the United States. If you're from Turkey, you cannot get a visa to the United States.
Let's talk about Russia and Turkey. Why not?
It's a tit for tat politically. I would say it is that simple. And that's why Russian nationals currently cannot get non-immigrant visas to the United States. They're simply not issued. So we see a trend that is rather harsh, and we see a scaling back of existing benefits, benefits that can be influenced by the administration alone without the doing of Congress.
President Obama, via executive order, passed 2 executive orders. One was Daca. What was the other?
The other one was DAPA. Those were the parents of the Daca kids, parents of children who were brought here without their own fault, and their parents being in the United States undocumented. That was the Daca program, the DAPA program. And you may remember when that program was enacted, a lawsuit was filed in the state of Texas, and 26 other states joined, basically stating that there is too much financial burden on those states having to issue a driver's license and providing other social services to undocumented immigrants. And you know that this case made its way all the way to the Supreme Court, and at that time, as we all remember, there were only 4 justices in the Supreme Court, and there was a 4-4 decision, which means there was no decision on DAPA. So that is back in its original court in Harlingen, Texas.
Let's talk about Daca. Where is Daca now? Where does it stand?
Daca is on life support. Daca started out in 2012 by way of an executive order that President Obama signed at the time, and it allowed children who have been in the United States for 5+ years and who were brought here under the age of 16 to apply for employment authorization and remain here. They basically got what's called deferred action. That means we're not going to deport you today, we're going to defer your deportation. And while you wait here, you may work in the United States. President Trump asked the Congress to legislate on DACA, and the Congress did not. So the president canceled the executive order, effective last month, with a 6-month lifeline on it. So DACAs have anyone who is in DACA, at this point, they just wait out their time. Some of those folks have maybe 4 or 5 months left on their employment authorization. Others have a year or 2 left on their employment authorizations. And the Congress has until March of 2018 to legislate on this. And if they don't, then it'll be back on the president's desk to either leave as is, which means there is no more DACA, or the president can certainly extend it.
Do you think there is hope that Congress will get something done? Is there talk in the Senate and the Congress to actually get something done by March?
There is talk in the Congress, but I see no action. I will point out to you, though, Edmundo, that the president said if the Congress does not act, that he will revisit DACA. So yes, I am hopeful. I don't see how anyone would banish the children who were brought here due to no fault of their own from the country, that they would now bear the brunt of the failure of us getting immigration reform.
Has there been a current enforcement of immigration, or is it just more visible? I mean, do you feel that immigration feels more emboldened due to the rhetoric that exists in the media and with politicians?
I think they are more emboldened. The law has not changed. Under the Obama years, 400,000 plus people were deported every year, and there was not much publicity about that. I think now you have more publicity, but you do not have more deportations at this point, at least not that I am aware of. However, the agencies have absolutely been emboldened, and I think it's a direct function of the negative rhetoric that we hear about immigration. And I'm not down on our Border Patrol agents or ICE agents.
They're doing their job.
Absolutely. They have a legitimate mandate to enforce the immigration laws of the United States. That's what they are here for. However, the actions have become more bold. It's become more harsh.
Has there been more workforce enforcement? Has there been an increase in workforce enforcement?
Yes, there has been. There's also inkling that it will increase by 4 to 5 times. I don't know what that means because there wasn't a lot of worksite enforcement, so multiplying that by 4 or 5 times may not be that much overall, but it is certainly a significant increase.
Let's talk about current trends. Since President Trump was elected, has there been any increase in immigration to the United States, or is it still stagnant?
I do not see more immigration to the United States. The legal immigration to the United States appears to be the same because we do not have enough visa numbers in any of the categories. So since those are always backlogged, I don't think that anything has changed on that. On undocumented immigration, that has certainly gone back because everything is now motivated by fear.
Let's go back to border security. Is it possible to secure the border and at the same time implementing a merit-based immigration system?
Well, of course you can secure the border. If we're in a border state here, and all you need to do is go down to the border, and you see, that there's a lot going on at the border. It's being patrolled electronically. There's physical elements there that you cannot cross, and there's plenty of Border Patrol agents. The merit-based system, and again, it's only my speculation. I don't think that that's going anywhere. It's somewhere in Congress, but I don't think that the basis of the American immigration system is based on merit. Canada has tried that. Australia has tried that. It is failing in Canada, by the way, where you have scientists and very highly educated persons immigrating because they have the merits, but then they can't find a job because that market has already been saturated. This country has always been a family-based immigration country, and maybe our Congress needs to be reminded what the scripture on the Statute of Liberty is. Give me your poor, your tired, your huddled masses yearning to be free.
How long have you been an immigration attorney?
Since 2004.
What kind of cases make it difficult for you to be an immigration attorney, for you to do your job, that come across your desk that are literally heartbreaking?
Well, any family case that deals with any type of family separation is, of course, heartbreaking. It's very hard. But on the other hand, it makes you a better attorney. It makes you a better advocate. And you try to find the right way to keep that family together or to bring them back together if they have already been separated.
Is there any one case in particular that comes to mind that reminds you of why you do what you do?
I think that would be almost every case. This goes not back to one case. Every case is individually important. It's a family attached to it. There's lives attached to each and every one case, and we strive to pay the attention each and every case requires on that. So it's not really one particular case. Immigration is harsh all around now. The heartbreaking cases, unfortunately, don't stick out anymore. They're all heartbreaking.
Let's talk about a lot of the rhetoric that comes from one side is, why don't they just come in here legally? Why can't they just follow the laws? As an immigration attorney, how difficult is it to come up through the system, let's say for Mexico, because it's different for different countries, but let's say for Mexico. How difficult is it to apply for residency in the United States and come up through the system?
The question, why don't they come here legally, is almost offensive. If you don't have the visa numbers available to let them in, how are they going to come here? And the immigration system is so mundane and it's so onerous. To get a visa, even to stay here temporarily as a worker, it's almost impossible to get it. I mean, take the winter lettuce in Arizona. It goes bad every year because it takes so much time, you know, to process the cases, to actually bring the workers here to harvest the lettuce. Or take the state of Washington. The apples go bad every year, a lot of them, because it takes too long to get a worker through our system. I mean, if you look at that our fruits go bad because we can't bring the workers in time, that just makes no sense. So why don't they come here legally? Because they can't. There are no numbers available, and the process is completely stuck up.
Mr. Zeller, in your opinion, is there a silver lining in the immigration debate?
Absolutely. It's on the map. Because of the harsh rhetoric and because what's been going on through the presidential debates last year, it's come to the forefront. If you recall, you know, years ago, nobody spoke about it. It was just this silent suffering. But now it's on the forefront, and we hear about it every day on the news, and I think that is a silver lining, because people are being made aware of what is going on, and it'll come out. And so hopefully, you know, we will have some sort of relief down the road soon.
Mr. Zeller, I want to thank you very much for joining us on Fronteras, Changing America, and we would love to have you come back and give us an update, perhaps after March, to see where Daca stands.
Be my pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on Fronteras, Changing America. I'm Edmundo Resendez.